Hello and welcome back to the BWN podcast. Today is the season finale of this first season, you could say, of the initial run of 15 episodes. And I say initial run, we have done this before, but it's been a long time since it's come back, when we had that original run with myself and Dan at Newcastle Sixth Form College. I really hope you guys, for at least this first run of the new era of this pod, that you've enjoyed it kind of been brought back with a very much a topical angle to it, and with the games at the end and everything that we've tried to do with it. It's been a very experimental period to try and try different things and find out what works and what doesn't. Obviously, we started in a very amateur way with just the iPhone and the DJIs, and from about 4 episodes in, we had the full camera system in the studio along with the mics that actually work. We've reached that point. We've grown accustomed to it, and we've had chats about how to perfect the system for season 2. But we're here. We're 15 weeks deep. We've done it, and we've had a very student-oriented experience because it's been more convenient and easier to get people on. But a lot of people have been asking to have more lecturers on from University of Sunderland. Obviously, we started off the season with Nick Glean, a massive way to bring the podcast back, and in episode 3, followed shortly after, we had Jay Sykes. But now we're in the finale of season 1, and we have managed to make it work. I said that I would try last week, and we've managed to figure it out. With episode 15 today to bring us home on this first run. We have Mr. Ian McPake. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good.
So this is the finale.
Yes.
This is it. Yeah. So we've got to make this a good one, right?
Yep. It's going to be a good show. Good show.
Is this my first podcast? I don't know. I've done interviews and stuff like that, but this could be my first actual podcast. All I know at the moment is this mic is very, very close. This is a very, very close mic. Okay. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation we'll have over the next hour or so. And yeah, let's see how things go.
So, for those of you out there who don't know, Ian is our program leader on film production at the Sunderland Uni. We've tried to get other lecturers on, and our plan is to do that in future, whether it be about writing or sound. There's definitely things that we're trying to do with future seasons. Just a bit of information before we get into today's episode. Season 2 is definitely going to start and end within 2025, and we know roughly when about that's going to start, and we're going to be recording it soon. But from this point forward, it is all going to be pre-recorded. And what I can say is with this particular episode, with it being about 2 weeks before it comes out, this may very well be the last thing ever on the main channel that is done pretty much in real time. Everything from now on will probably be deeply pre-recorded months in advance, and it's going to be a very different kind of system moving forward. But no, with the end of this first season, it's going to be very much still in real time. I know we doubled up last week, and we saw today, and we've got Jacob Varley's coming out. But no, in 2 weeks' time, this will be coming out, and you'll be obviously seeing it today, and that will be on the 18th of April. It'll be today. That's when you'll be seeing this. So yep. Overall, I hope you've enjoyed this first season. We're going to have a great episode today when we talk about film potentially thriving in the northeast with a lot of developments that are happening, and there's at least in the Sunderland Uni culture with film production, there's I thought there was no one else better to talk about that than the leader of the course. So we'll see how that goes today. But first of all, as always, how are you guys doing at home? I hope everything's going okay. Of course, now we're heading into season 2, and this is kind of the last real-time opportunity to say so. If you have any suggestions when it comes to guests who you know from the sort of network environment, but also topics particularly that you'd like us to cover in future episodes of the podcast, do let us know in the comments down below. Over in terms of content, because I haven't been able to say this until now, with updates, the slate is very much on the way. We are now a few weeks out from the first project of 2025 coming out, so stay tuned once this podcast is over, with a little bit of a hiatus with the projects for 2025 finally starting to release. But no, other than that, let's get right into this discussion. So, first of all, I think the place to start would be to maybe just sort of tell us a bit about yourself and your role in the university to start with, and then we'll maybe kind of discuss how you got here. But first of all, tell us a bit about yourself, Ian.
Okay, wow. I was born in 1975. my favourite colour's blue.
Can you tell?
Yeah. How did I get here? I've really worked at the university for a number of years. Mm-hmm. I think I've worked here for about 20 years now. Most of my thing about being at the university and the course and the different areas which I actually teach is just because I was kind of from like a very young age, I was just totally in love with film. Mm-hmm. Watching movies, going to the cinema, watching things on TV. I think my first movie that I remember, I went to the cinema with my mum and my sister. I don't think my dad was there, but I think we went to see a re-release of Snow White. the animated version of Snow White in about 1980 in the Odeon in Newcastle, and
Wow.
I've got a bit of a vague recollection of that.
Didn't that used to be isn't that the Cineworld? Is that what it used to be? Was it? Is the gate?
Different location.
Right.
Yeah. So it's the bottom of Northumberland Street,
Right.
which it's been knocked down now. It's across the road from the Tyneside Cinema.
Right.
So
okay.
I kind of went. Yeah. So I just remember like vague memories of like seeing this version. I kind of remember the queue actually.
Mm-hmm.
I remember kind of queuing up, like being like even shorter than I am now. I remember just like standing in a queue with my mum and my sister. My sister's a bit older, and I just remember we went to see Snow White. I think, unless it was a dream, but I think it was real. And I kind of remember sort of like seeing it. And then I just kind of remember getting into films like really, really quickly from like when I was dead young, from like 6, 7, 8. I kind of got into horror really quickly. I kind of got into, it was a sort of 80s sort of like time. So I remember kind of probably 84, 85, started watching, they showed like Jaws on TV, and they showed like Alien on TV and The Thing. And so when I was about 8, 9, 10, I just kind of got into like horror movies and literally on the video recorder in our living room, recording these movies like at late night and getting in from school the next day and putting them on. And kind of watching these like watching The Thing when you're like 8 years old, and you get in from school, and your mum's like, "What are you watching on TV?" And I'm just watching this terrifying horror film. So yeah, I just remember just this deep rooted love of cinema and films, and then watching Back to the Future and Stand by Me and Flight of the Navigator and all those like cool 80s films. And then probably as I got a bit older, it was like, well, how can I kind of like make this a job? And at the time, it was like it was. How do you get a job in this area that no one I know works in this area at all? It just seemed to be less like, a million miles away, really. And kind of what I did, I went to, obviously I finished school, I went to university, and I just got into writing a bit. Writing was kind of the one thing that was sort of like tangible, and it was the one thing I could do. Couldn't really afford a camera, couldn't really afford like an editing system at the time. But the one thing I could kind of do was I can kind of start to write scripts a little bit. So I just started doing like a little bit of writing and just writing little shorts and little scenes and that sort of thing. So that was kind of how I kind of got into it. And that just progressed really, and I continued doing that, and I wrote a feature script that kind of got optioned when I was about 20. I think I was about 20 when it got optioned by a company. So they had the rights to it for 2 years. They never made it. It was this big sci-fi film, but it kind of showed me that there was people in the area, there was companies in the area that were doing film, and like things were actually going on. We had like Scientists, we had the BBC in the northeast. So there was like some sort of like media activity and like media things kind of going on. I did a bit running on a commercial in the northeast. That was the first time I'd kind of like been on set. And so so things just sort of like progressed from there really. And then my undergraduate degree was more in it wasn't in film. I did like history and American studies and and English. So I remember there wasn't really very many like film degrees or media degrees at the time.
Right.
And the ones that were out there were like really difficult to kind of get on. And I was thinking, do I even bother going to university? Like if I'm going to do a degree, I'm not like that interested, because I kind of wanted to do film production, but it just wasn't really achievable at the time. I said there wasn't really that many courses kind of doing it. So I did a course. I did a course that was a little bit more writing based, a bit more story based. We sort of analysed films a lot more. But that was in terms of like American like culture. So I kind of did that. But then after that, I did a master's. I did an MA course in media production. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of when I really got into the sort of like the more technical side of things. That's when I started to I made my first few like short films. And that was really interesting. That was like a whole new world to us. But people kind of know me a lot now as sort of like kind of like a bit more like the tech guy, the camera guy, the Steadicam guy. But like the tech came a bit later on. Actually, I wasn't like 10 years old running around with cameras. I kind of got into the tech sort of in my early 20s. Mm-hmm. So I did my masters. I made a couple of shorts. Then after that, I got a bit of a normal job. I was a coder. I did coding, a bit of IT at the time. But at the same time, I was still writing. I just kind of just sort of like pushed things on from there, really. I started doing a bit more running, a bit more production assistant work. One thing I say to students now is when they say, I want advice breaking into industry, then there's various ways of doing that. Obviously, having content behind you that you make at university. various means and ways of kind of getting in. But one thing is, like, do you have a driver's license? So at the time I had a driver's license, and my first few jobs, I was like art department driver. So, and I would kind of drive the van a bit. I would sort of, I'd pick up props from like local businesses or different things, and then take them to actual sets. I'd pick up actors sometimes and like drive them about. I'd drive crew to like different places. So my first jobs in industry were just like the driving aspect of it, the driving part of it. So which kind of like broke me in, and I kind of like got to meet like lots of people in industry. And then sort of like later on after that, I got a call from Sunderland University. Do you want to teach a 4-hour class in documentary? And I think I was about 26, 27 at the time. And I was like, all right, okay. Right, yeah, I'd never considered like teaching at all. And I said, yeah. I said, when did it start? I said, tomorrow. We need you to do it tomorrow because someone's dropped out. So I was like 20, I think I was 27, and I was teaching a 4-hour documentary class. And I didn't think I'd ever teach, but I really enjoyed it and I really liked it. And then I kind of became a lecturer at the university, like a part-time lecturer and a technician. Right. And that was sort of like 20 years ago, and I've kind of like continued that since, and I try and do bits of freelance sort of like when I can now, usually like camera or Steadicam based. I make documentaries still. I've made a few short films still as well. So trying to keep connected with industry in terms of my own work and in terms of my freelancing. But my main job pretty much became just like a full-time lecturer. Mm-hmm. But I'm talking to you guys, talking to the fellow students, at the university on all the different courses, but obviously particularly film production. I kind of like really enjoyed it. But teaching was never really something that I considered at all when I was much younger. I just kind of like fell into it somehow. So yeah, I mean, I think for me now it's just to keep the freelance going a little bit, keep making my own productions and just continue the teaching. And then I became program leader in 2019, where you've just got a little bit more control of the degree, kind of what's going on, the future direction of the degree. And I quite like doing that and kind of like shaping the vision. It just means I'm really busy all the time. Yeah, that's the main sort of thing. Just when you're program leader. I've
definitely picked up on that.
Yeah. So, but you know what? I think when I was, when I was like 5 years old and I like started to kind of get into cinema and I watched that like first movie in the cinema, I've still got the equal passion for movies. Mm-hmm. Like it's still absolutely there. And I still go to the cinema regularly. I still obviously watch loads of stuff on streaming services and on TV at home. And I've just still got like the absolute passion for cinema and for movies. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to see how movies have developed and the industry's developed and changed over the years in terms of like where we're now currently at. Yeah. And how things have changed. So we seem to be in quite a pivotal moment. It feels like in terms of the industry and the technology related to the industry as well, whether it's AI or VP. Things are really changing like extremely quickly at the moment. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I just kind of love it. Yeah, so that's a very probably long-winded overview of your question.
Ian's opening monologue. It was great. It was wonderful. The two things I would say to bounce off with that. First of all, like later in what you were saying there is you've still got that same passion for it, and I know that. I certainly know Nick's thoughts on it. Sort of what is being produced nowadays. How do you feel in terms of like with what's been released nowadays? With obviously by the decade things have changed, stylistically things have changed. A film that's released today is very different than what would have been released in the past. Frankly, in the sense I was always thinking of making a joke at the start because I was thinking the recent Snow White, which is very very recent, almost thinking will that be cherished with a re-released in a similar way? And I think most likely not.
Definitely not. Yeah, definitely not.
It's thinking. What do you think of what's been released now, first of all, and then if you're able to bounce off it further, and I like what you were saying earlier about how and I thought it was very interesting how you said when you were looking for courses and you were going more down a historical route, you were saying there wasn't sort of a film degree at the time, or at least it was hard to get on one. Yeah. How does it feel now, as well as that passion for still having a passion for film, as well as thinking about what's been released now? How do you feel now for someone who wasn't on that film course because it was limited at the time, now being the very person who runs one? Because I find that very interesting. How that's a very unique angle, really. How it's kind of you become a role that didn't exist at the time.
Yeah. I think what's interesting about being program leader, and as I said, when I started in 2019, so the first thing I did was we did a bit of a rewrite of the program.
Mm-hmm.
So my thing is, right, if I was a 18-year-old, a 19-year-old, and I was coming to university, like, you know, in 2025, and I absolutely loved cinema, what course would I want to do?
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of used my frustration at the time that there wasn't that many film courses, and the few that were there, it was hard to get onto. So I used that frustration to sort of channel and shape kind of what I do here and the choices we're making in terms of like of the modules and my classes and the structure of the program. I think, right, if I was 18, what degree would I want to do if I loved cinema?
Mm-hmm.
And that is kind of like that sort of. I've chat with Nick and I chat with Joe and Gary and loads of colleagues, obviously. But that it does boil down to that. Like, I'm 18 years old now. I love cinema. What do I want to get from a course? So when we've done changes and rewrites and program restructures over the last 5, 6, 7 years, that emotion, that sort of feeling is my guiding emotion on it, and also it's like, and I want the course to be good. I want the students to sign up to it because they love cinema, and when they're on the course for 3 years, is the course doing everything that they want because they want to work in the TV, the media, or the film industry? Are they getting what they want from the 3 years? And can they, when they graduate, break into industry? But those feelings are quite like they're quite at the forefront of my thoughts. Still, it's what course would I want to do if I was 18? It really is that. And in terms of like, you know, cinema today and movies, I think there's one thing I really miss about when I was younger, and there was like so many films. I mean, I know I mentioned Snow White. I mean, that was obviously the animated version. I know there's loads of controversy around the current version, which is totally understandable. But I think particularly growing up as I guess I was a kid in the 80s and a teenager in the 90s, it just, maybe I've got rose-tinted glasses on, but we just had so much choice. Mm-hmm. I think I kind of miss choice. So now I know we've got the streaming services and the platforms, and there's loads and loads and loads of content on them. I do find sometimes they're hard to find. There's like so much stuff on there. Sometimes it's hard to find like good content, like good movies. Sometimes I'll spend like half an hour just looking through Netflix and I just think, oh, let's turn it off. I don't know what to watch. You can't do that quite a bit. I felt like when I'd go to the cinema, there was like 15 films on, all really different. Whether it's blockbusters or it's a bit more independent, or that's, you know, from different parts of the world, it just felt there was a lot more choice and a lot more variation going on in cinema. The one thing I miss about that is, you know, when we go to the cinema now, there's just not that much choice anymore. Mm-hmm. Often the films are really sort of samey, which is a bit of a frustration. Which is why I try and get the sort of tie-inside cinema as much as I can. Yeah. There's still a lot of variation on there. I quite like watching like old films at the cinema as well. I went to see Jaws a few years ago. Went to see Jaws in 4K, and it was like I've seen Jaws 200 times, 300 times. It's one of my favourite films. But to see Jaws in the cinema, this must have been 2022, I think. It was unbelievable. I'd never seen it on the big screen before. I'd never seen it with that sort of a sound system before. And it was like watching a different sort of movie. And what I realised was, this film is totally deserving of the classic status. It is actually that good. And you've got a Spielberg who's 27 years old, who, when he directed it, it's just someone who kind of like could direct from a very, very young age and was just so mature as a filmmaker. Yeah. It's an unbelievable film. So yeah, I mean, you know, so I do worry a bit where cinema's going. Obviously, cinema's closing down a lot, and that just worries me a lot. And I think kind of there's nothing better than watching a good film in the cinema. Yeah, you know, you watch a good film at home on Netflix or Amazon, like great, you know, fantastic. But if you're in the cinema, and there's a bit of a community thing going on there, if it's busy, on the big screen, you know, sensory overload, the visuals, the sound, you know, great storyline, which is the number one thing. That's kind of the experience that I want from the cinema. And I do worry that is that dwindling a little bit? Is that becoming less and less with less choice? You know, so that's probably, But, you know, you've got to remain optimistic, and you've got to, particularly you guys, you know, as students, you guys are the future of the industry, right? Mm. You guys have got to just keep it going and keep the whole thing sort of like moving forward, and make sure that you go to the cinema and make sure that you see the movies, so the thing doesn't collapse. Yeah. So, that's to end on a very pessimistic note. So the whole thing doesn't collapse.
No, I wonder. I've always wondered how the money thing works with the cards, because I currently hold 2. So I've got the Cineworld and the Odeon one.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So basically, it seems absolutely ridiculous when you actually consider both the price together. It's a lot of money a year, but it's like I've easily break even on that because you got to say about then 20 in each establishment to do it.
Yeah,
so that's saying like 40 a year and kind of chop and change between the two of them.
Yeah,
It's I've always wondered how they get money back off that, in the sense of like you pay £200 a year, you can see as many as you want.
Yeah.
I've wondered how for the people who pay the annual memberships, and I know it gives Cineworld money, for example,
Yeah.
but I've always wondered how that trickles back to the industry itself. I don't. Yeah, I've always wondered that because it's like it's obviously if you're paying a full price ticket, that eventually finds its way there.
Yeah,
but
I
I've never understood that with the cards.
Yeah, I don't really know. Yeah, I'm not sure how that really works.
Because I know definitely it'll benefit the cinema chains,
yeah,
but I don't know.
Well, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think that what they want is they just want people in. They just want people in the cinema, sitting there watching the movies. I mean, I remember, I went to the cinema quite a bit during like the COVID lockdown years a bit. And I remember just kind of like sitting there. There was either like or even sometimes by myself, or with a few other people, or with somebody else. And it was kind of weird. It became the norm watching films with just like 5 people in the audience, or 10 people in the audience. And I saw some really good films. I saw like was it After Sun? Maybe that was a bit later. After Sun was 20. But I remember watching After Sun. That was probably 2023. I think it was 22, 23.
It was.
And I kind of watched that. There was like 3 of us in the cinema. And it was a completely emotional experience. Yeah, I really loved it. I think it's a great film. But I remember thinking if it was a full auditorium, that would have like impacted, people watching that together as a community, watching that movie, which I think would have heightened the experience. But I guess the reverse is when I watched After Sun, I had a very personal experience watching that movie. And because I felt a little bit isolated because there was hardly anybody else there, I really tapped into that movie. And maybe that was based on the subject matter of it, the content of it. Maybe that made me see it in a different sort of way that was maybe made it more personal because there was like hardly anybody else there. Yeah. But then again, I remember going to watch big blockbusters and there's still nobody else there, and that wasn't quite the same experience. Yeah. So yeah, but I just think just getting to the cinema and filling the auditoriums up. Yeah, I think Oppenheimer was that the first one where I was like, oh my god, wow, there's people. Yeah, there's people here. It feels kind of weird now. There's actually people like sitting in the cinema.
It's strange. I've had a few occasions where it has been absolutely packed, as you can expect.
Yeah,
and then other ones where, like you say, there's been essentially no one. And I'm going as much as I did. Probably I'll never go as much as I did in 2023. I saw 145 things. Mm-hmm. Like I went that much in 2023. I'll never top that. I'll never get back to that same level as going as religiously as I did. Mm-hmm. But the trends that I noticed, there was big ones. So I was pleasantly surprised at things like Minions, as you'd expect. Minions was always opening weekend, absolutely packed to the rafters.
Yeah.
Indy 5, I was actually quite surprised because I know people complain about the quality drop off. Everyone turned up on opening night for that one. That was packed.
I quite enjoyed Indy 5. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't. I deliberately. I think maybe no more than Raiders, but I hadn't been familiar with it by that point. Yeah. I deliberately wanted to go into the new one because I didn't want to see what the classics were and then get let down. I thought, you know what, I'll see this, think it's probably half decent, and then get pleasantly surprised by the old ones.
Yeah.
That's what I prefer to do. I didn't mind it. It was like you say, it was that. Obviously, the Marvel in their prime were huge, but another one that was I thought was quite pleasant was I went to sort of the card holders screenings. So you expect a fair people to turn up there anyway, like people dedicated people. Yeah. But I went for that one, which I was really surprised they did it for a movie this big. It was Knives Out back in 19.
Right.
That one crammed. Yeah, you're talking a couple spare seats.
Yeah,
I was very surprised for that. I know it's an all-star cast with who done it, but it isn't Marvel. I was very surprised just how many turned up on that screening, and that helped the comedy a lot. Jokes were cracking left, right, and centre, and everyone was in fits. And I genuinely, that is one of the nicest experiences of a movie I've had. Yeah, because everyone was just laughing their heads off all the way through. It was brilliant, and I still fondly remember that. With what I'm doing now, heading towards third year, it is the biggest inspiration going into what I'm doing. It is. I really love that movie, and it was that kind of experience with a collective environment that helped it. And obviously, it's like you say, it's been a lot more quiet as years have gone on. And the one, I've had a couple of experiences where I've had basically no one, maybe one other person in there, and it's felt very individual. But the only experience I'll probably never have another one like it was in November 23. It was one called Journey to Bethlehem. And if you don't know what it is, essentially, I think it was us who made it. But essentially, it's a nativity story.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never seen anything. Honestly, I thought it was one of the best movies of that year. I loved it. It was a musical.
Mm-hmm.
It was just really, really good. And I was the only one in. I think it was a Saturday morning in the gate. So it was Newcastle even.
Mm-hmm.
No one.
There's no one there.
No,
yeah.
I was blasting the songs, blasting. I didn't know what to expect. The trailer looked awful. I only went. The only reason why I went because King Herod was Antonio Banderas. So I thought in terms of writing a little review up, I thought it had enough relevance because he was in it.
Yeah.
Only reason why I dragged myself on the metro, nearly missed the metro, and everything that made me stop, nearly it didn't end up making it to that seat. I went, not a person in sight, and it was one of the best movies of the year.
And you loved it.
Yeah, and the fact no one was there, I think almost aided it.
Right.
It was just.
So would it not have been better if there's a crowd, or was it the personal experience, like I said before?
Because that's the thing. It's like I think in some cases you really appreciate everyone being there, and then in other cases I just felt absolutely. I almost, well, the irony is I felt blessed. The fact I was there and there was just nobody.
Yeah,
it's really definitely in whatever way, whether it be quiet or everyone there.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely, I agree with you in the sense that I don't think it's an experience that should die. So I think the more people who show up and keep it afloat, and even if it goes the way, because my personal prediction with it, and this really ties in what we're going to be talking about, is that my personal prediction with it is that I think if it dies out more and less and less people go and more branches close, it maybe might go the way of the vinyl, in a sense of you've got a couple of cinemas around which get mega business because they've almost become a museum.
I think you might have. I think one way it might go is you might just have like art house cinemas.
Yeah,
I think it might just be small, like the Tyneside, like we mentioned before, just those smaller sort of cinemas, probably like smaller capacities. It could go that way because sometimes when you're sitting in a big multiplex and there's like hundreds and hundreds of seats and they're empty, I mean that just cannot be like financially viable, can it? And that kind of is still the case to an extent, I suppose. But maybe the big multiplexes will shut down and we'll just have these art house cinemas in cities and in towns. And if you want to go to the cinema, that's kind of where you go. And maybe that's the reality of it. I don't know, but I mean I've had some of the best experiences in the cinema, just like kind of watching unbelievable movies. Back from when I was a kid, and even quite well, I suppose. I remember I went to see Parasite, which was is that just before COVID kicked in?
Yeah, and 19 it was.
Yeah, and that was a very popular film. Obviously, won loads and loads of awards. But there was a bit of a vibe. You could get the filmmaking community and the audience kind of watching it as a collective experience. But I remember going to see like Jurassic Park.
Yeah,
it was unbelievable. I remember going to see Wayne's World. I've never seen Wayne's World, and it's kind of like so dated now. But the audience were just laughing throughout all of that. I remember going to see Dumb and Dumber.
Oh, what?
And you know what I mean? Kingpin, just.
I imagine. Now that you say that, I just imagine seeing that. I can. It's almost like for 5 seconds, I wish I was from that different time. I imagine seeing that one scene in the bathroom for the first time with no context. It's a classic scene now. But seeing that one thing with a massive audience for the first time, that would absolutely finish me. I'm just thinking now that probably would have been just that audience experience for a first time viewing in Dumb and Dumber in the cinema with a big screen was probably absolutely electric. Yeah,
there was. Yeah, it was just so those amazing experiences. But it is you kind of watch them back now and they're a little bit dated. But at the time, it was just brilliant. I remember I went to see a re-release. This is probably in about 99 or 2000. I saw a re-release of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre,
right,
which came out in like 73, 74, something like that. And I'd never seen it before. I wasn't born when it came out. I think it was possibly banned. I think it might have been banned for a couple of years because it was one of those video nasties. Yeah. And there was a re-release, as I say, in like 99 of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I was like, all right, okay, I'll kind of go. And I think I dragged a few mates along to go, do you want to see the Texas Chainsaw Massacre? And they're like, really? Do you want to see the Texas Chainsaw Massacre? And I was like, yeah. So I went to see it. And that was for like a low budget, like $10,000 film from 1974 America. That was one of the most intense cinema experiences of my life. It was kind of freaky. It was because the film was a little bit dated. It was a completely like immersive watch on the big screen. You didn't know where it was going to go. Literally, the whir of the chainsaw became like hypnotic almost. I was like, it's relentless. I'm going to have nightmares. So it was like a 5-star experience watching the film, and I thought, right, I'm definitely going to get this on DVD. So obviously, DVD was the thing then. I'm going to get this, and it came out on DVD. Like a few months later. I remember watching that at home on the small screen, and it just turned into a comedy. It was comical. The experience, it was. I've probably seen the film twice now. One in the cinema, okay, that intense experience, and then watching it on DVD at home, and it was like a completely and utterly different movie. It was much more funny. It was much more, not like light-hearted, but just that intensity. Just it was just gone. It was just gone at home, and it was kind of like just a bit more funny when you saw the characters doing these various things that they do, but in the cinema it was just like, it was quite like intense and overpowering and overwhelming. Yeah,
I think one of my earlier sort of first movies was also a re-release because my uncle took me to go see it, and my uncle like peas in a pod, but he's a big Star Wars fan, and and he took me. I think I'm gonna say it was probably the 10th anniversary because I'm figuring out in my head, and I reckon I was young. I reckon I was probably 5 when I was taken to see this. It was the Phantom Menace re-release.
Oh right,
so I remember seeing that. It was the first one I ever saw. So I've always got a soft spot for the Phantom Menace, no matter how much people complain about it. Like the Duel of Fates at the end, and we had these so we had the 3D pod racing glasses.
Right.
So they're like the 3D glasses like they were designed like that, and I've still got them. But that was one of my early ones was a re-release as well, and it's they've and I think the first one I ever went to the cinema to go see ever was one of, I don't even remember. I think it was 2009. I think it came out 2009. It was called Astro Boy.
I remember Astro Boy.
Yeah.
I think I saw it, but I do remember when it came out. Yeah,
I think that was the first one I ever saw. I'm trying to think of other ones. There's like Toy Story 3 was one of my first few.
Oh, it's emotional as well.
And Marmaduke.
The dog?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was one of my first ones as well, but I think it was Astro Boy. Yeah. I think specifically Astro Boy. The one that got me into it, which might explain why I do, because it's so meta and postmodern, which probably explains why everything I do now and like the modern filmmakers, you could say, that would do. It's like the one that really made me fall in love with it was the Lego Movie.
Right, it's a great film.
I saw that.
It's a really good film.
That's what got me into it. I got the iPad out and I was videoing my Lego figures, and that's where it started.
Yeah.
It was that. So it's. I mean, there's definitely. It actually is a good through line to go on, because it's kind of these elements of the past and kind of what elements of what we've been through to make us who we are now, and the things that we're going to make. I know that I spoke a lot about that with Rodrigo last week, and the variety on a national scale is something that we also talked about, whether it be sort of being from Peru or be also from being here, and what others would do in this country. Obviously, a lot of what we do in this country in terms of film, I know, at least from what I've seen in the cinema, the more wider release ones is BFI funded projects, and ones that are made typically down south. We are starting to have a bit of you could say, how would you describe it? Sort of a surge, or would you even say a beginning of a massive growth up here? You could say, in recent years, and now leading into the future with an enormous prospect that is for industry anyway, that is going to be built just over the river, and that's obviously been a lot in discussion over the last year or two. From being a program leader in a course that is the closest one to literally where it's being built, it's I think everyone for a while now, I felt that everyone's kind of looking over their shoulder as if everyone knows what's happening, and it's almost like this kind of ambiguous thing that it's going at some point, it's going to click into place, and we'll see what happens with it. Obviously, I'm not. You might know this. I'm not entirely sure if there's a sort of a target finish for it being built, but we know that it's coming. How does it feel in terms of, from a northeast perspective? Where do you see this going with what's happening with this, and with the Crownwork Studios, and how does it change your mindset in terms of the course setup? Okay, so how, if that's the end goal, does it change your mindset to how the course is built almost in a way, and how do you feel about this thing happening and it's kind of on the way, which I'd say at least in probably the next 2-3 years, I'd imagine. It's massively coming along. So yeah, how do you feel about that and sort of the grand scheme of things?
Oh yeah, I mean it's a huge thing. You know, I mean, I've talked before about you know, when students graduate and you know, how do you break an industry? How would you find work? I mentioned the fact I'd do a lot of the driving. That was kind of my way in, because I had a driving license. But I think the fact if there's a studio a mile down the river in that direction, it just puts the industry on our doorstep. So I do. Will it change the way we teach the course, the way we structure the course, the modules that we have? Maybe. I don't think so. I mean, I think we need to see what activity goes on there.
Yeah.
We need to see what productions come to the region. You know, are they we know what sort of content are they making? You know, is obviously high-end TV, different types of media, films. You know, we need to see kind of like what they book in, what they get. And you know, it's an ever-changing landscape, of course, and things are changing a lot. I think if we feel there's a need to change the course, you know, to tap into that industry here and the wider industry to make the graduates more employable, then that will absolutely be something that we'll consider for sure and potentially change. But I think it's a really exciting time. There's a lot of investment coming. I mean, in terms of, you mentioned sort of timescales there, Matthew. Now, as far as I know, I mean, obviously I'm not entirely sure myself. I'm not really involved in that process, but I know the groundworks are kind of being prepared. There's talk of, I mean, there was talk of 19 sound stages initially.
Wow.
I think that's like the end goal. What I think might happen is they might build a couple of sound stages, or sheds as they keep referring them to. I think they'll build a few, and I think they might then see how it is and see how many productions kind of come up and kind of see what goes on and how much activity is there. And I think if there's demand, then they might build a few more. That seems like a logical, instead of just building 19 sound stages or 18 sound stages, one of the two. I think they'll, I don't know for sure, but I think they might just build a couple, see how it goes, build a few more, and to kind of see what it's like. But there really is a huge push to kind of get investment in the north, and particularly within this region. And it's kind of been talked about a lot. There was 10, 15 years ago, there was talk of a big studios in Seaham, you know,
right.
Building a big studios in Seaham, a massive complex, loads of productions to come to the northeast, and that was talked about for a couple of years, and that's just sort of like ended for one reason or another. But this is obviously very different. The funding is there. The funding's they've got the funding basically, you know, and from the government as well. Even the government have put in a percentage of the funding. So now we're just kind of waiting for them to kind of get started and build it. But as I say, it does seem like the, you know, activity's kind of starting in terms of the construction. So for you guys, you know, current students, for students kind of coming through, it's a really exciting time. You know, because, I mean, in previous years, some students have stayed local. A lot of students have stayed local and they've got into what was a really sort of like vibrant industry in the northeast. Actually, quite a small, you know, in the grand scheme of things, probably quite a small pool of people. But what I always loved about the industry was everybody kind of knew everybody. Everybody knew what sort of productions were kind of going on and the different activity that was happening. And and networking was very achievable because there was a few events. There wasn't like thousands and thousands of people, so you could kind of like speak to people, you could call people, you could email different people as well, and just kind of like connect with people, which I always quite liked that sort of like local aspect of it, and that still does continue today. And we've got a lovely filmmaking community in the northeast. Yeah. And I think that'll continue. Obviously, I think it's going to change, and with more investment as well come to the region, hopefully there'll just be more work so people can be really busy all the time, because I think going into freelancing as well, pretty scary. Okay. Yeah. Or if you're going to start a media company, you know, pretty scary. But I think if there's just a lot more support there, if there's a lot more work there, a lot more things for people to do, then it'll be so good for the region. But you think about, like, you know, Hartlepool Studios. Yeah. Hartlepool Studios just down the road. That's been I was talking to First AC just a few weeks ago, and he was busy. He's been busy job after job after job after job at Hartlepool Studios. He spent so much time driving up and down the A19 going to the studios, because that's where he's been working on that film or that project or that TV show. And they're extending Hartlepool Studios as well, because there's been such demand there, so they're increasing the size of that studio, which is really a good positive message. Then obviously Crownworks is starting as well. And someone was talking to me the other day. I was having a chat with somebody, and they mentioned just the number of production companies that are increasing in the northeast. In the last sort of like 5 years, the amount of production companies that are getting set up, working on various different things. It might be social content, it might be TV. You know, it could be anything really within this in the sector. But people obviously feeling pretty good and confident enough to set up companies that there is work there. Yeah. So we're just on the edge, you know, on the edge of this explosion, I hope. And it'll be amazing for some, it'll be amazing for the region, and for people such as yourself who kind of want to get into industry, and not for it to be that distant thing that's impenetrable. And am I going to make it? Am I not going to make it? Am I going to have to do something else because I couldn't find a job or there wasn't enough work? That's really serious and scary stuff, isn't it? You know, when you're thinking about what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And if that was just a lot more achievable, that's so good, because there is a total like passion for, as I said, the community of filmmakers in the Northeast, craftspeople, freelancers, people who love watching movies. That is just, we're such a hotbed for that in the Northeast, and it'd be just great if all this stuff does work out. So I'm really excited about it, and I think it really sort of like fuels my passion in being the program leader, and in being a filmmaker, and in being a Steadicam freelancer, because this is all like really positive stuff, and it could really change the face of the Northeast. It really could. So fingers crossed.
The with it's kind of coming at the end here. I've kind of figured out in my head now. I've got 3 more things to ask you about this particularly. The first one would be, I want and if we can, for time wise, if we can sort of at least, we don't need to linger on these too long. But with the first one, what would you say is sort of the primary motivation as to why a prospect of this kind at the Northeast would be sort of erected from the ground up, and possibly it allowing a lot of people to find work up here? What would you say? Because obviously, I'd say if you were to ask anyone listening in this country where the primary motivator of the film industry is, at least in the British film industry, would be London and the South. With it transitioning up here in a big major way with the studio, what would you say is the primary motivator as to why something of this scale would be done in the first place?
London's really expensive, right?
Yeah,
it's really expensive. There's loads of people, so it could be cost.
Yeah,
you know, it could be. You know, if you're going to bring productions to the Northeast, if you're going to shoot a film in one of the studios down in London, okay, or around that area, or if you have a studio up here, it's going to be a lot cheaper to make that film up here. So I think the primary reason is the economy, is the cost of a movie, and I really do think that. Yeah, I mean, obviously London was been the key hub forever, and London's exciting, and there's loads of really good skilled people down there. Loads of the graduates from the University of Sunderland have gone down there as well, who are doing really good work. But I do speak to a lot of graduates, and they say, I'm in London, loving it, lots going on, I live in the big city, really expensive. And they often say to me, they just, in previous years, in previous times, they just wish there was a bit more going on in the Northeast, so they could maybe balance their work out between being, if they're from the Northeast, so being closer to home, and then maybe it's a bit being in London as well, or being in the other regions. Yeah. So yeah, I think but I think the economy of it, and just like living in London or renting in London, obviously buying a house in London. I mean, it's just so expensive at the moment. And getting increasingly expensive. I think if companies want to come to the Northeast, it's quieter, it's affordable, and it'll just bring they won't need as much budget. Yeah.
The second thing would be I want it, and this might be a rough one, but how I want to talk about a potential sort of newfound compatibility that can be achieved with because I know that earlier when you were talking a few minutes ago, you were saying about how the community up here is very strong, and you're saying everyone knows everyone, and if anything, the filmmaking community in general is based on who you know, and it's an enormous part about being employable. With what you've said there about the potential motivator for coming up, and with the Northeast community, and then obviously a lot of a South community, probably looking to make productions up here, and then by extension then bringing work on, especially in probably an entry level capacity up here. With the compatibility there of the things that are already here, that potentially much smaller than what would be down south, and what is coming up here. If a lot of it's motivated around kind of who you know and connections that you have, and things that people that you can fall back on, essentially, that you know do a good job. And I know that things are often assembled in that way when crews are being made. There could be potentially a difficulty there of people almost coming in from the outside with things that are coming up here. So from sort of an entry level capacity, how do you feel about things sort of getting off the ground with people finding a way in, because it's no secret that it's not easy to do to begin with. But there's with productions coming up from the south, that there's it definitely doesn't make it easier, even though it's here. It's certainly more convenient in terms of travel, like you're saying, driving. It's an enormous plus. The fact how it's so close to home, but it's in terms of at least the first few years, once this studio eventually does open, whether it's a trial run with a few sheds, as you were saying, or then it expands further. How do you feel that kind of it's almost like a coexistence? How do you think the pre-existing order that would be coming up and a new order that's forming up here? How can you see a balance being made there, essentially, with new talent coming to the forefront, but then also the pre-existing ones obviously knowing their friends, and obviously you can't blame them wanting to work with the same people. How would you find that kind of coexisting?
I mean, that's on the agenda.
Yeah.
So for Northeast Screens, our screen agency, Northeast Screen. I mean, all the regions have got their own screen agency. Ours is Northeast Screen, but it's on their agenda. They've to employ local crew.
Yeah.
So I mean, there will be crew from other areas, other places that kind of come to the Northeast. But certainly, if they go through Northeast in terms of the crewing, one of the guarantees is that you've got to employ a certain percentage of crew from the Northeast.
Interesting.
So that is because it would make no sense to have all this activity come to the Northeast of England and employing crew from outside the region. So I think there will be a push. There's a focus on employing Northeast crew, and I think that's just a given. I think we want people that's really skilled. People up here in sound recording, writers, camera operators, directors. There's really skilled people here, and I guess is it an untapped? I suppose in terms of that, there's the size of the productions that could be coming to the Northeast. There's really the skilled people who can do the work.
Yeah. So
I think there will be a push to keep as a percentage of the crew in the production Northeast based. I see it now. I was on social media. I was on Instagram the other day, and there was a short film produced in the Northeast just in the last few weeks, and they were talking about the percentage of Northeast crew that they were on that production, and it's almost, and there's a real commitment and passion from filmmakers in the Northeast as well to make that possible, to make sure this position, we're not just going to employ people from different regions, we're going to employ local people as well, to make it, to really get the community going in the Northeast, and to make sure the work is there for people to not have to move. Yeah.
But that's very optimistic. I wasn't, at least in my case, I wasn't aware that was that sort of percentage, whether they had discussions behind closed doors about that. I wasn't aware that was a thing. That's very optimistic to hear, and I'm sure a lot of people who haven't heard that yet feel a lot better about it that way. I knew I had to ask, because if it's a concern of mine, I know it would be a concern of a lot of people, but that really puts that point at ease.
Yeah, I think there will be, if a production's coming from elsewhere, I think they'll always probably want to employ their own people. Yeah. But I do think that it's one of the things about the Northeast is that a Northeast screen in particular, got to have some Northeast crew on this. There's got to be a certain percentage of Northeast crew to promote the region. And I think that'll just become normal after the first few years. We'll just, because I say there's a real wealth of talent up here that's got to be utilised.
So on a closing note before our final segment, one last question for you would be, with everything that we've discussed and the future film going into the Northeast, and with new industries forming, and smaller and larger, especially with Crownworks being the epicenter of that, where do you see film in the Northeast being, let's say, 10 years from now? Where do you see on that riverbank how this city's going to look? Also, from my personal opinion, from what they're doing in the town centre, I can see improvements by the year at this point. Yeah. I'm liking that's a start. I know it's on a side note, but I can see things starting to change. Yeah. So, and this is Sunderland's case specifically, but with the Northeast as a whole, but particularly Crownworks, where can you see us in about 10 years from now?
Yeah. I mean, this is a tough question, Matthew. Yeah. This is very 10 years' time. I probably can't predict a year's time. Can I predict a month's time? I don't know. In 10 years' time, I mean, I guess the hope is that we've got a really vibrant film industry, in film and TV industry in the Northeast of England, that has brought money and jobs to the area, that's changed the face of a lot of our cities, of our towns, because there's more employment. That people can find the careers they once thought wasn't for them because they weren't in the right part of the country, because they just couldn't afford to break into the industry. They couldn't afford the equipment. So in 10 years' time, I hope things have completely and utterly changed, and the Northeast is a powerhouse for the film industry. That's what I hope. Obviously, but then you've got other things like emerging technologies. You've got the AI thing kind of coming in. You've got VP, and with the technologies, I think at the moment things are just moving so quick. I think they'll have an impact in terms of filmmaking and how they impact filmmaking and jobs and roles in producing films and creating films and for crew. So, and acting as well, I guess. So I think they'll have a huge effect, but I think in 10 years' time, it does feel to me like things will be very, very, very different. And I'm hoping that's a real positive change, because I think, particularly in the region, we need that investment, we need that change. And you mentioned, Sunderland looks very different now, and there's a lot of investment coming. There's more buildings going up. And I just hope that trend does continue.
Yeah.
And some of the wealth that's sort of in the southeast gets spread around a little bit. That gets moved around to the different regions, but obviously from the northeast, we're here now, and hopefully, a good proportion of that, a fair share of that, does come to the northeast, and we're a vibrant filmmaking community that's respected around the world for producing amazing content.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ian. Thanks for giving your insight on that today.
Yeah.
Right then, it's for those of you who've been watching this season and know the drill. For the last time, it's time for our weekly game, which we can't be going on a quiz set up with a lot of these things, but it's time for our last one of the season. Real or no real? Oh yeah, that's great. I'm just, you know what? Bravo for that one. That name is great. Right then, okay, here we go. A game where you or your guest guess whether a film, fact, or production was actually based in the Northeast or not.
Oh, okay, right, wow.
I believe this
Pressure's
is about, I think, 15 questions it is. Yeah, brilliant. Right, so for last 15 questions, here we go. Right, here we go. Question 1. The movie Billy Elliot was filmed in Newcastle. Yes?
Well, you say Newcastle. It's obviously complete northeast for sure.
Uh-huh.
But was it? I don't think it was. Was it Newcastle though? Was it actually Newcastle? There might have been some scenes in Newcastle.
Yeah, I'm definitely nodding my head like I've seen it.
I did see Billy Elliot at the cinema, and it was definitely shot in the northeast. But was it actually Newcastle? I know it was shot in some of the pit villages in the northeast.
Should we find out?
Yeah, let's find out. Easington.
Oh, County Durham.
Pit villages in the northeast. Easington, yeah.
Right. Cool.
Not quite Newcastle. Close,
I'm
Close.
seeing 14. Is there a bonus one at the end? Just 14. Just 14. Cool. Right, here we go. Number 2, 14. The Netflix thriller The Stranger features scenes shot in Middlesbrough. I've never even heard of that one.
I don't know. I'm not into it. You know what? At a punt, I would say yeah.
I'm going to say yes. Switch it up from question 1. I'm going to say yes.
Yes.
Yes, because I also try and figure out the patterns of what the yes and what the answers are on the producer's end. So I'm trying. So yeah, I'm gonna go off a lot. Yeah, of averages. Right, number 3. Scarlett Johansson once studied acting at a drama school in Sunderland. That's quite out of the box. I'm gonna say yes.
Well, I'm gonna say no. You can go yes. I'm definitely going no for that one.
Do you know what?
That would be amazing, wouldn't it? That would be
so
good.
This season you got me because I always these out of the box ones I always go and I always get it right. Fair enough. Okay, yeah, I know that. Yeah, number 4. Parts of Avengers Endgame were secretly shot on the Northumberland coast. Well, I know they did some in Durham Cathedral. I don't know that much. So
I know Durham Cathedral, and some students were in Durham Cathedral when they shot there. Northumberland coast. Let's say yes. No.
You're getting so much better at this.
Nope.
Because you knew I'd said that's good. Fair.
Okay.
Fair.
But it was Durham. It was definitely Durham.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Right, number 5. The 2000 film Get Carter, starring Sylvester Stallone, was filmed in Newcastle.
I'd probably say a pretty solid 100% no for that.
I'll go with you because I've never heard of it.
The original Get Carter, yes. You know, it's a famous northeast Newcastle film, isn't it? But the Stallone remake, no way.
Yeah,
yes,
come.
Yeah.
Come. Right then, number 6. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone filmed scenes in Alnwick Castle, Northumberland.
Easy one, Matthew. Come on, easy one, Matthew.
No, because I know they did some. I know, but it was Durham. No, is she not trying to throw us for a loop?
Come on. That's.
Oh, was it done there as well?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, right.
It was Durham. Yeah.
Because I knew it was done somewhere. Yeah,
Yes,
there.
yeah.
Cool. All right, fine.
Yeah, you're a Harry Potter fan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go on.
Right, and number 7. The British rom-com Love Actually shot its beach scenes on Tynemouth Long Sands. That seems like a yeah.
You know what people want? You know, people keep telling me to watch Love Actually. I never really watched all of Love Actually. I've seen bits, and like I just don't really fancy watching, but people love it.
Lovely place for ice cream, by the way.
I think probably no for that. I think that's a no.
Yeah, so it wasn't done, but I will say it. Lovely place, by the way. I highly recommend, especially on a Sunday day. If you can catch it on a Sunday day, it's a lovely place to go. It's definitely one of the best places up here. Right. Okay. Number 8 to 14. The BAFTA-winning short film "I Am Your Sister" was produced by a Teesside-based crew.
That sounds like a yes to me. I think that's a yes.
Again, clueless.
Yes.
What would the answer be? Yep. You're right. Okay, number 9. Actor Daniel Craig grew up in North Shields.
No, he played a character that was from Newcastle. What was the show again in the early 90s? Can't remember the name of the show, but I think is he not from Liverpool? I think he's from Liverpool.
I don't know. This is a hard one. This is a really hard one.
So I think that's no.
I'm finding this difficult. No, yeah, you're right. But he was actually born in Chester and raised in Liverpool. But he looked good in a flat cap. Right, okay, cool. Number 10. The Baltic Centre for Contemporary Art was used as a filming location for a futuristic sci-fi series. Honestly, I think this checks out because it's a pretty decent location.
Well, it could be, but what was the futuristic sci-fi series? No.
No. Is this because my mind immediately, whenever it says futuristic sci-fi series, I automatically just think Doctor Who. So is this? I think
it could be. I think that could really be a great location, but I think it's a no. But you might disagree.
I'm gonna just say yeah. I'm gonna be contrary.
Oh
yes,
one
right today.
One right.
It? It's been used as a backdrop in Indian student films, and its modern aesthetic attracts filmmakers. So the futuristic one was a film we'd never heard of.
Okay.
Yeah. Right, 11 to 14. Netflix is building a major production studio in Sunderland.
No.
Okay,
no, it's not. It's not Netflix. Well, yeah, it's not Netflix, is it?
That's the thing. I was going to say, what do you mean by studio?
Definitely not.
Oh, if it said office, I would have been okay. Maybe Crownworks makes it, but yeah. No, it's studio. Yeah, you're right. Okay, so no, that's no confirmed Netflix hub. 12 or 14. The Northeast has its own film and TV development agency. You've mentioned that today.
Yes.
Yep. Northeast Screen. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep, that's right.
Oh, yeah.
Northern Film.
Well, they were Northern Film and Media. They're now Northeast Screen.
Oh, yeah. Right. The number 13. Oh, yeah. This is. I think a lot of people know this. The zombie horror 28. Oh no. This is not what I thought it was. The zombie horror 28 Days Later has seen shot in Hartlepool.
So 28 years later, it's obviously shot in the Northeast loads last summer, hasn't it?
Holy Island, I know.
Did 28 Days Later shoot up here? I went to premiere for that, at the Tyneside Cinema with Danny Boyle and Alex Garland.
Oh, really?
We watched the film and we did a Q&A with those guys after it. So it was brilliant. Did they shoot up here? I'm kind of 50-50 on this. Probably not. Let's say no. But it might be yes.
No. More scenes were in London and around South. Yeah, they didn't have the budget to come up here after they shut the streets. After they shut the streets, they didn't have the budget for it. It's how do you feel about the new one? Because I'm coming to this from a newbie. I haven't seen the previous two. I'm really looking forward to
it. You know what? I think it's great. I think it's like it's so good for the region that they've shot that one up here. There's going to be a trilogy as well.
Yeah.
I think it's unbelievably good for the region that they've shot up here. It's given loads of people work. I hope the film's really good, and I hope they come back and they film the next two up here as well. If it's a good horror film and it's exciting, bring it on.
I'll say this much: even if the movie is absolute garbage, I will say this much: one of the best trailers in years. That trailer's amazing. I really love it. Yeah, that's great. That's right. Number 14. Last one. The indie drama The Leveling was partly shot in the Durham Dales.
I've got no idea. Really don't know about that one.
Do you know something worse than that? I have no idea what the Durham Dales even are.
The hills, right? Yeah, the hills. I don't know. That's. I don't know the film, so I couldn't really say.
It's
so
a very hard
it would
one
just
this
be a
week.
guess.
Credit, because it's a really hard one. It's a hard quiz. Clearly yes. The
yeah,
bleak
wow.
beauty of the landscape made it ideal for the film's tone.
Out in the hills,
and real or no real, that will do it. And for the last time, Finn.
Right,
okay, so that will do it for today's quiz. But that will just about do it. Have you enjoyed yourself?
It was great, yeah. Thanks for having me today.
No, wonderful.
Yeah, it's been brilliant. I look forward to coming back next time. Just for the quiz, actually. the quiz is fun. But yeah, no, thanks for having me today.
No.
Good chat, good discussion. Let's see what happens in 10 years' time.
Yeah, absolutely. Hope for the future. But no, thank you very much, Ian.
Yeah,
It's been
really
wonderful.
good. Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
a lot. Yeah,
Thank you.
cheers. Thank you.
Right then, so that will just about do it for this first sort of revamped season of the BWN podcast. I hope you've all thoroughly enjoyed it these last 14 to 15 weeks. It's been a good run, and we'll see you some point before the end of 2025. But that's it from me today, from myself and Ian, and me just in general with the season. Thank you all for watching, for those of you who've tuned in from the very, very start. Thank you to our producer in the back who's worked very, very hard the last 15 weeks to make sure this is possible, and because I've just come in and I've done my thing as host. But she's made the magic happen behind the scenes, so thank you very much. That will just about do it for season 1 of the revamped BWN podcast. We'll see you next time, some point in 2025. But until next time, goodbye.